Wow, it's 2015. No, it's not. It's 2025. It's the wrong decade. We're going backwards, actually.
Start, man.
We don't even know each other.
Nope. I was getting a tonsillectomy.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Well,
You
at
know,
least got
things.
to get some ice cream out of that.
Well, no, because I have my situation where
Oh,
I can't eat
right.
cold dairy.
Right. You're just boned.
I had to have popsicles because that was the only thing that I could actually keep down.
I mean, that's not bad either.
It's not, but it's not ice cream.
True. uh, 2025. That's the year it is
That's the
now.
year. Yep.
Uh, Anyways, hello, welcome to this week's episode of the Season Anime Checkup OVA. It's a podcast where we have conversations about video games, anime, and manga. Hello, I'm Jared, joined as always by Doc Al and Lady
Hello.
This is episode 419, and it is time to talk about Al's Game of the Year from 2024.
My game of the year. You're number 3.
Last year, Metaphor
Yes.
ReFantazio. We're going to talk about it.
Studio Zero. Atlas. Sega.
Because we didn't get to talk about it last year because we just did not have time.
No, I mean December's usually set on like what we have time to do and what we don't have time to do, and we didn't have time for this. And you know, you had to beat it, and it's worth taking time to play through as opposed to trying to rush it.
That's me
Gotta go
rushing through
fast.
it. Yes, the critically acclaimed video game. We're going to talk about it here today. This game came out last year on October the 11th of 2024 for the PlayStation 4 and 5, the personal computer, and the Xbox Series X and S, of course. Yeah, we were. I obviously, if you had been listening to our podcast, some of our our preview episodes and all that sort of stuff, we have been very cautious about this game, very tentative about this game, just because of
Hesitant.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because of
Who's
all
behind
the
it?
the bullshit that has been in numerous games headed up by director Katsura Hashino
Yeah.
previously. So it was just like look, it looks nice and everything. It's got some great style to it, like
Mm-hmm.
job system and all that stuff. It's a different setting, so that could be interesting. But you got the big elephant in the room of okay, when are they gonna break out the homophobia, the transphobia, the over sexualization of women and
Mm-hmm.
young girls, all that sort of stuff? Where's that gonna show up? And that was a big red flag for us because we were like, that's history would tell us that that's probably gonna happen. So
Yeah, and I mean, like they had every opportunity with the re-release of Catherine to fix some of that, and they chose to double down on it. So I was like, ooh.
right.
Um, so yeah, and obviously Persona 5, both of us have severe issues with in terms
hmm
of the writing. So I was like,
And those things
mm.
extend as well as far back as Persona 3 and 4 as well. So
Correct.
a long history here. So yeah, we were very hesitant going into this, and then I believe right as it was ramping up for release and everything, there was a Kotaku article that came out that was basically like,
It doesn't
yo,
have any of that
yo,
junk.
they didn't put any of that stuff in there, and we were like,
Huh?
huh,
Hmm?
huh,
Hmm?
huh, which is very surprising. And then you were the one who played through it first, and you were
Hmm.
pretty high on it
Yeah, it's pretty
coming
stoked.
out of it. So and I played it afterwards, so I got to know at least that hey, it doesn't have any of the stuff in it. Al likes it a lot, which is saying something.
Hmm.
So there's got to be something here to this, and hey, it turns out there's something here to this.
Yes.
But to find all that out, let's talk about the development of this here video game.
Okay.
A game that has been around for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
Following the Japanese release of Persona 5 in September of 2016, which I know sounds like a long, long time ago.
You almost got the 2015 right.
You're right. I almost did. Game director Katsuro Hashino, who had been involved in Atlus's tentpole franchise Megami Tensei as the prior game director for Shin Megami Tensei 3, Digital Devil Saga, Persona 3, Persona 4, as well as the creative producer of the publisher's second creative production development, later known as P Studio, announced his intent to leave the development team and his duties with the Persona series, citing a personal desire to explore other projects due to what he considered a shift in the creative direction with Persona 5. On December 19, 2016, Atlus Japan revealed that Hashino was establishing a new internal development studio within the publisher named Studio Zero. The first game was announced 2 days later as Project ReFantazio, later named Metaphor ReFantazio. So yeah, this has been kicking around for 8 years essentially.
Right.
And we really hadn't seen a lot of it until maybe like a year or two ago.
Mm-hmm. When it got the rebrand, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Metaphor features Persona character artist Shigenori Soejima and music composer Soji Meguro. Other key staff include producer Junichi Yoshizawa, writer Yuichiro Tanaka, and gameplay designers Asasa Kido and Kenichi Goto. Alongside the game's reveal, Japanese publication Weekly Famitsu released an exclusive interview conducted between them, Hashino, and Atlus company director Naota Hiraoka. The latter outlined the importance of Project ReFantazio as a new IP for Atlus, affirming that the goal behind creating Studio Zero was to aim even higher with original projects that could stand separately from either the Megami Tensei or Persona franchises, though the development team's formation was previously stifled due to the people of interest to the company being committed to other projects at the time, which partly led to Hashino's selection to serve as creative producer and game director for the project after finishing Persona 5. Hashino explains Studio Zero's intentions of creating a role-playing game rooted in traditional fantasy aesthetics, reflecting on his awareness of the publisher's reputation for creating RPGs with contemporary backdrops to counter developers who were more comfortable with the fantasy genre as it went mainstream. Hiraoka additionally spoke to Soejima and Meguro's involvement in the project, calling them both indispensable members of the Persona team who would continue to hold their respective roles at P Studio, but were brought onto Studio Zero and Project ReFantazio due to a shared desire between Hashino and Hiraoka to have their talents serve another project away from their typical contributions. On December 23rd, Atlus opened up the website for the studio with a forward from Hashino and an unveiling for further staff involved in the studio and Project ReFantazio beyond Hashino, Meguro, and Soejima. And then they were like, we need people to make this game.
Hey, you want to help us make this game?
Yeah. A second concept video for the game was released in December 2017. December 2017? December 2017, alongside the announcement that Studio Zero was developing the enhanced re-release Catherine Full Body for for PlayStation 4, not Persona 4. For PlayStation 4 and PlayStation Vita.
Never die.
Alongside the teaser, a new developer message from Hashino was released online where he clarified the team was very much in the middle of development, but not to the point where they could divulge specifics regarding the title's gameplay, though the teaser was meant to infer elements of the game itself. In later interviews, Hashino stated that he would have more to share on the game following the Japanese release of Full Body in February 2018. In the November 2019 issue of Game Informer, Soejima affirmed his enthusiasm for being involved in the game's development, describing the challenge presented regarding defining what exactly is fantasy and how we can bring a meaningful fantasy game into this world. That was a lot of words.
Mm-hmm.
He also asserted that the game was in a state where a concrete direction had been decided upon, and the team were moving forward with it. A second interview between Weekly Famitsu and Naota Hiraoka in July 2021 included further anecdotes regarding the game's progress, where Hiraoka stated Project ReFantazio is progressing little by little, and we hope to deliver it when the timing is right. And this is about the story. Hashino stated that the primary keyword he thought of when devising the narrative and setting for Metaphor was utopia, and exploring themes regarding the dissonance between an ideal fantasy setting in the real world, where goals such as achieving equality are unattainable. Hashino and the writing team took into consideration the variance in perspective on topics such as justice and reason, and wished to create a world with characters who did not adhere to strict values of what was morally right or wrong. This allowed them to deviate from the clear-cut dynamics previously presented with the narratives in the Persona series, which often involved morally incorruptible teenagers confronting evil adult figures. Despite wishing to largely deviate from conflicts and finer themes previously explored in the Persona games, Hashino wished to retain the player-driven sensation of living through and experiencing another world, much like the school life component of the aforementioned series, but wanted the experience to evoke a trip with set intervals for activities rather than a long journey. Another main theme explored in the game's story revolves around personal anxieties, with the characters having arcs built around realizing their inner strength, as well as fighting their anxieties and fears by fighting personal ground with others. Games lead scenario planner Yuichiro Tanaka, who reprises his duties from the Persona games directed by Hoshino, took inspiration from political clashes in the real world, you don't say,
You don't say.
which he believed to be sourced from the different ways people confront anxiety, leading him and the writing staff to devise the concept behind the tribe system in Uchronia, with disparate communities interacting with their fears in different ways. Unlike the social mechanics of the Persona's games, which enable the ability for the protagonist to become romantically involved with their party, Metaphor eschews such relationships in order to retain the realism of the scenario. Hoshino explained that the game pivoting towards an adult-centered narrative and the royal election as a backdrop meant focusing the strengthening of bonds on garnering support from the different regions around Uchronia, meaning it was important to prioritize the support of communities unto the protagonist over the back-and-forth romance. In an interview with the Washington Post, Hoshino described a question about how the game's story was about hope and fighting for a future we can only imagine as really hitting the core. Hoshino then described hope as progressing towards something undefined and undetermined by you or anyone else, and said that he wanted players' gameplay experiences to encourage people to analyze their own lives. And then the music, of course, was composed by Shoji Meguro, and then they got that monk to do the chanting.
Yes, and it's in Esperanto.
Yes.
Also think it's interesting to note, there's like a little side note here about the human designs.
Yes.
That a lot of them are based off of like Bosch art, which is really cool. Because like some of his art is completely bonkers.
Which, like, you can see in this painting here on the Wikipedia page, it's like, all right, well, here's the big ears with the sword, which are very much in here. Here's the boss with, like, the dudes that are inside him, and he's got the little hat and people, and there's, like, the horns coming off of his head and all that sort of stuff. Like, these are just straight up in the game, essentially, so.
Yeah. And the human with the apples and the legs and everything is in the same painting. This is the Garden of Earthly Delights, by the way.
Yes.
I was trying to see if there's any of the other ones that I recognize. If this would cooperate with me. Hello? Computer?
Computer says no.
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 I forgot Jesus looks really weird in this.
You know, he's just there hanging out. Like, hey, what's up?
Well, his face is like very blurred. Just kind of weird, but anyway, I'm sure there are other ones in here. I'm sure the creepy baby isn't in here, but anyway, there are obviously some nods there that are straight up just like ripped out of the art.
Yeah.
Which is cool. I mean, like that's a nice little nod.
So yeah, they announced this game back in June of 2023 at the Xbox Games Showcase. That was the first big thing of like, hey, this is what this game actually is. So what, 7 years after it was announced, they're like, all right, here it finally is, and then a year and a half later, it's out. It is here.
It's here.
The DLC is not really that memorable. It's just costumes. They're gonna do a manga for it, of course. They had they had the Haas F1 team put a livery on one of their F1 cars during the Singapore Grand Prix to promote the game.
That's so funny.
It's very funny. And of course, the game has been very highly acclaimed from critics. It has on the Metacritic 94 out of 100 for the PS5 version and 92 out of 100 for the PC and Xbox versions. And on OpenCritic has a 99% critic approval rate, essentially. It won some awards at the Game Awards. It won Game of the Year from GameSpot and IGN. So people like this video game. And also, of course, won Game of the Year from one OWL, which is much more important, of course.
Yeah, I'm way more important than Jeff Keighley.
So yeah, again, I think the big thing that to take away from us, at least for us, was that we were just like very surprised of like that this game is like as maybe not as good as it is, but it's like as less problematic as it is, and like the ways it is tackling like social themes and social problems and all that sort of stuff. It's like, who is these Who is this team, and what have you done with the original Studio Zero?
Right, like what kind of life changes did you guys
Yeah.
have? What happened? I do think it's funny that he's like, this game's more adult, so there's no romance. And I'm like, okay, yeah, Hashino doesn't know how to actually talk to women.
I mean, to be fair though, it's kind of for the best that there isn't. So
No, I agree. I 100% agree. Also, I feel like it would be like pretty problematic that like the whole idea is you're trying to get supporters and like if you're trying to like romance one, then it kind of comes across as like, I don't know, corrupt.
yeah.
Like you'd rather them be like these are your ride or die bros and that's it.
Hmm.
They're supporting you. They believe in you. They believe in your cause. Let's go. I think that that's a much better route for this.
100%.
Yeah. But yeah, also just this team. I'm surprised.
100%.
Yep.
It's very surprising. I mean, like if you look at it from like the gameplay, the graphical style, like all the stuff that's like not the writing, it's just like okay, yeah, they made another one of these. Of course,
Hmm.
it's going to be like fun to play. It's gonna look great. The music's gonna be good. Like all that stuff is like on par with what you would expect. But like yeah, the writing is just not at all what I was anticipating going into this game because you think of like Atlas making a fantasy game wrapped around the idea of like uh, a country in turmoil who's trying to elect a new ruler and everything, and like all of the political machinations that are involved with that. It's like I don't think you guys are the right people to do this, and then it turns out like okay, I guess you guys are the right people to do this.
Right. It
It's very very wild. But yeah, this game was good.
was very good.
It was
I
very
mean, like
good.
again, like the stuff that you expect to be good is good. Like the UI design beautiful, the music's incredible, the characters are like really fun. Um although like I think the characters hit a lot harder than I expected that they would.
This might be the best like overall like main
Yeah.
cast of characters that they've done ever.
I would agree with you. I would 1,000% agree with you because like every single one of them was a really strong character. Every single one of them had like really meaningful arcs when you had your little supporter events with them.
Hmm.
Um, like they grow independently from you too, which is good.
I think it
Um,
also helps that like like the last party member you get isn't like the traditional like oh well they're just kind of showing up at the end of the story so like they don't get as much development type deal, which is very nice.
yeah, he hangs around for a bit before he actually joins, so you actually get to know him
Hmm.
and you get to see some of his struggles to deal with like, well, I don't know that I agree with what's happening here and I don't know that I agree with the situation that I'm in, but I'm in it, and so what am I gonna do?
Hmm.
So you get to see like it doesn't feel like a like out of left field he joins up type thing.
Yeah.
You get to see like his growth, his movement, and him see like, okay, this is the path I want to take, and I'm gonna take it now because I have the opportunity. Um, so he doesn't feel like a like tacked on last character type situation,
Right.
which is great. Um, they're all also of different races or tribes, whatever you want to call them.
Hmm.
So you have to deal with some of that. Having a little Batman be a little racist towards one of your characters for a while.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. I was like, "Oh, buddy, you gotta tone that down." Like I get his reasoning. I understand where he's coming from. I don't agree with it, but I understand where he's coming from. But at the same time, I was just like, "Oh, buddy, you basically just said a slur." My God. Which I mean, he is your old man of the group, so I guess, there is that. But um, he grew out of it by the end of it.
Thankfully.
It's so funny that I was like, oh, I feel like that's really offensive what he just said. Is it okay? I guess we're moving on for that. But yeah, I think it's absolutely the best main cast that we've ever gotten from this team. Probably one of the best villains too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know as well as I do, like, I like Adachi. I think he's an interesting villain.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like in terms of Luis, he's legitimately scary.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like going up against him, I was like, oh, this feels tough. This feels like we're not gonna get anywhere. Um, and yeah, I guess I mentioned this I think during our podcast. I don't remember if it was during our podcast or in my write up, but like playing it when I did was intense because I played it right before the US election.
Right, 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 right.
So there was a lot of it that was like, oh, this is hitting close. Yikes. Woo. Hey,
just a
you want to
just
know
just a
how
smidge
like
close.
you want to know how like religion can be corrupt when it's a state-driven religion and
What?
you want to know how like social Darwinism can be extremely problematic?
What?
Um, yeah, yeah. You want to know how like segregating races and tribes is not necessarily a good thing? What? Um, so yeah, there was a lot that was like, "Ooh, buddy,
Ooh, buddy.
you know what you were doing here." And I think it's also, I think a good thing that we play as like essentially a racial minority.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's even stuff like for a while in the game, you can't even use the church to purify stuff because they're like, nah, we don't serve your kind, get out of here. I was like, whoa! And, like you'll walk around the street and they're just like, oh, that guy, that gross dude. No wonder bad things are happening to us. That guy's here. Or like again, like there's a kid walking like while you're walking down the street, there's a kid in like the um like slum type area that's just like basically throwing slurs at you, and it was like, whoa, chill out, child. But I think that that was a good idea to have us play as like basically the most minority of the tribes and like the ones that are like most hated, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because it did make for an interesting story of like how are we affected by this and how are we going to overcome it to make people come to our side.
I think it helps as well that like the protagonist is like much more of like an actual like character in this
Yeah.
compared to most other like Persona games or SMT games and all that sort of stuff. So like they feel like an actual person rather than you just like sometimes chiming in with a choice here and there. Like they have lines that they say. You can like the choices are there, but they don't really necessarily matter in the same way.
Hmm.
So like
And a lot of them are voiced, which is also nice
yes,
because you get kind of a personality from like, oh, okay, this is how he would have answered that way.
yeah, 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 yeah. So I think that really like helps out this game in particular because like like I said, all those other games really don't have that necessarily, and like it helps you know it helps you see the like the bonding of the protagonist and all of the other characters like in a bigger light when
Hmm.
they're able to like have these kind of conversations that aren't just like one person talking to another to a silent protagonist or something of that nature essentially.
Hmm.
So all of that is very good.
Very good.
Very good. But yeah, what else can we talk about that's not diving into spoilers immediately?
Um, the king felt like the Majora's Mask moon.
Yes, just creepily getting closer and closer and closer to you.
Just staring at you. and following you around. It's like, whoa, hey, buddy.
I'm gonna get ya.
What's up there? Oh, there are faces in your eyeball. Okay.
Arrgh.
Grr. Um, so that was funny. Um, I'm sure we'll talk about some of these as we get into spoiler zones, but I do want to say, like, I also really, really appreciated the way that the supporter events were held. Like, your choices don't actually matter. Like, you're gonna level up no matter what, which is great.
Right, right, right.
Um, but I also think that they were all like really, really good. Even the ones that weren't your teammates were really well written and give you a lot of good insight on what's happening in this world. It's nice.
And even though like the choices don't matter, you can just be a complete goblin to people if you want to,
I was a complete
with no
goblin to people.
repercussions. And everyone's just like, dude, what is wrong? What is wrong with you? What are you doing?
Why? Why are you like this? But then they still go along with you, so it's
Yeah,
fine.
there's like, yeah, whatever.
That's just who he is. He's a little goblin
Little
man.
goblin.
And I was like, yeah, that's me. I'm a little goblin.
What are you gonna do? Uh,
It's funny. Um, I will also talk about this when we get into spoilers, but just a basic overview of like, hey, the English voice acting is really, really good.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Really good. In case anybody was worried. It's very good.
Like it's very solid.
Hmm.
A lot of I mean, it's very British sounding, which is by intention. It makes like that's the thing you're just gonna get in terms of like fantasy stories a lot in terms of like when it's in English, because that just makes it
Hmm.
sound more fantastical, I guess.
Except for Gallica. She's just regular gal.
Yeah. But yeah, everyone's really great in this. Like, there's like no one that I would say is like, oh, they're really bad in their role or something like that. Like everyone just is really well done. They bounce off each other really well.
Hmm.
It really works,
If I remember correctly, I looked it up that like Luis's voice actor, this is like one of his first roles,
which is wild.
which is wild. Let me check to make sure I'm not lying. Yeah, this is his very first credited role.
It's pretty. That's something.
Can you like, damn, your first credited role is Luis, and you knock it out of the park. Like, geez, dude, good for you. That's so funny.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's incredible. Good for him.
And like I haven't listened to the Japanese dub, but like it has a lot of prominent names in it as well.
Danjo.
Like Danjo's in it. The voice of Solid Snake is Haizme. Um, Jungi Han's voice actor is Luis.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So there's a lot of like big names in here. So like I'm sure it's as good as on that side as it is on this as well. So both sides eating over here.
Mm-hmm. Nom, 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 nom. Yeah, I can't think of anything else that I'm like, this isn't gonna be spoilers.
Well then let's dive into spoilers.
Spoilers.
Spoiler me up.
Spoilers.
Al, tell me about all the spoilers.
Man, I knew I was gonna like this game as soon as Stroll's awakening scene happened. Holy crap, that scene is good.
We got a big stroller over here, am I right?
Oh, I mean, like I've made no secret of the fact that Stroll is my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
You're not supposed to pick favorite kids, but he's my favorite. But that scene is so well done. Um, and like seeing him like rip his like metal heart out and then like using it as a mic to talk to his people, just like, oh, this is metal as hell. Um, and again, voice actor completely knocked that out of the park. That's the same voice actor who was Dion in Final Fantasy 16.
Yes, yes, I remember you mentioning that.
Yeah. So, him doing nobles is it seems to be a thing. Um, but yeah, as soon as that happened, I was like, okay, I'm invested. Let's go. Let's do it. Let's do it. And then I was in for the rest of it. Which, I mean, good thing that was pretty early on. Because at first I was like, I don't know, like what am I about to get myself into? Da, 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 da. Okay. Okay. And it just kept going like that the whole game. Wow. Wowie.
Wowie zowie.
Wowie
It
zowie.
do keep going.
Yeah. I really think that where this game shines the most is the character writing.
Yeah, genuinely.
Because the characters throughout the different like parts, like the moving sections of this, um, they're just so well written and like the way that they react to the situations, it's really, really good. Um, like the emotional weight of like the second big area with the baby, like there was a lot that happened there.
And then you get that weird baby.
And then you get that weird baby. They gotta kill a weird baby. It's just a baby head with legs and a long tongue.
Blah, 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 blah.
But like, you have to contend there with like the what's the word I'm looking for? Um, like the lingering issues that came from like a horribly racist situation and um, her having like depression and dealing with like a I guess psychosis based on like her losing her kid.
Yeah.
Um, and then like she has the whole like, yeah, I'll turn myself in, it's all fine. Everybody's like, oh, is she actually gonna do it? Stroll, like, she'll do it. I believe in her. It's good. But then none of them like expected her to get decapitated.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, okay then. Well, that's
Yikes.
well then. And I forget who it is that tries to say it later on. They're like, yeah, she probably knew that was gonna happen. But it doesn't make it right.
Right.
It's like, oh, okay. Ah. But like that was a really, really great section.
Hmm.
Just like again, the emotional weight of that whole thing was so well done. Um, but then you also get like worm buttholes.
Worm buttholes. Um, I will say like I think there's like a lot of like you can put a lot of parallels of a lot of the character archetypes to other archetypes that have been used in like Persona and SMT and all that sort of stuff. But I feel like these are like the best that like we've talked about this like or like you've been saying like this is the best they've done those. Like I think Stroll is probably one of the best like your first like friend type dudes that like they've done in this sort of thing.
Yeah,
Um, Hulkenberg's just a goblin.
she just wants to eat everything.
Yeah. Hulk Hoganberg, dude. That's right, brother. I want to eat all the meat, dude.
But then she's also got the like super dedicated side to her
Yeah.
that like she's basically spent the last decade of her life trying to like not give up hope that the prince is alive
Mm-hmm.
somewhere. Um, so she's a goblin, but a very dedicated goblin.
Yes. Heisme is a great like kind of like the elder statesman of the group character.
Hmm.
Um, which works really well. Juna's really good as like your famous friend essentially. She's the Rise
Hmm.
of the group.
She is the Rise of the group.
Um,
Also a goblin.
Also a goblin. Yufa's fun because like obviously she's like learning about the world essentially
Hmm.
and all like the weird things that she had no idea about.
Right.
And then Basilia's like the good, just like kind of on the wrong side, turns into uh onto your side type deal.
Hmm.
Which I think again really helps because like we talked about earlier, we start off like seeing him on Luisa's side, and like you slowly start to see him kind of like turn to like maybe these guys aren't that bad, as like they have to kind of like run around with you and everything.
Hmm.
And then like after Fidelio dies, like he has to like come to terms with everything and like joins up with y'all and all that sort of stuff, and it's a really like interesting arc that he goes through.
Right.
And then Gallica is just Yukari with like good hair.
Or at least hair that makes
Or
sense.
they finally understood how to make Yukari's hair when they made Gallica. But Gallica's also great. She's just like a bro.
Yeah, she's just your little buddy companion.
Yeah. She's going to hang out
She's
with
fun.
you, sit on your shoulder and be like, yo, you're doing great. We're going to do things. Yeah.
I'm gonna pipe some music into your head, kid.
Let's go.
Which is hilarious that canonically, like, the reason that the music shows up in the game is because Galaga is like basically casting a spell, a music spell
Hmm.
on the protag, which is really, really funny. They're like, hey, we have to come up with a reason why he hears the music. Here we go. She's a fairy. She can do it.
She's a fairy.
It's great.
Hmm. Yeah, like I really enjoyed all like the main party members. They were just a lot of fun to get to know and everything, and just like it really felt like you were making this real like tight, cohesive group.
Hmm.
Um, that again it's like ride or die and all that sort of stuff, and just like everyone was like interesting in their own way. There wasn't like a weak link character or anything of that nature. It's like here's just like a very varied group of very different people, but
Hmm.
they're all have their own unique traits and everything, and have their own backstories that are intriguing, and it's a really fun group that you learn about throughout the longness of this game. The longness.
The longness. Yeah,
Yeah.
and again, like their interactions are also interesting too. Like you have the like I don't know exactly how to describe it, but like the Stroll Hulkenberg relationship where he's just like, why are you like this? Like the whole game. Um like that was pretty phenomenal. And Heismay and Basilio like having to deal with the whole like Heismay's super racist against uh um shoot, what are they called?
The Parapus.
Yeah. He's super racist against them. Um So, they have to deal with that and contend with that. Like I said, Heisman sometimes like throws down what feels like actual slurs at him. Um, but then you also find out like some of these guys who were most likely, it's hinted at, they were most likely like human experimentation, or not human experimentation, but experimented on um regarding humans, I suppose. Um, were the ones who killed his son.
Mm-hmm.
And so like you could see why he'd be like, oh, okay, don't really care for you guys. Uh, but at the same time, like it's not like a black and white because like these were people who were driven insane by being experimented on because of like experimentation for trying to figure out how humans exist essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then by the end, they're like, all right, let's have our Lord of the Rings moment.
Yeah, they 100%. Because like I think I got to that when I was on call with you, and I was like, oh, this is just the Lord of the
Yeah,
Rings moment. It's like
it
they just
was.
ripped it off 100%. Like that's totally fine. Like they can do that. It was just 1-to-1, just that. And I was like, oh, okay, see what you're
It was
doing
just,
here.
yeah, that was just Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
But it was still good to see because it's like, all right, y'all understand each other a little bit. It's good. It's very good.
We're boys now.
We're boys now. Fist bump.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it's really good. I love the interactions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I also think that some of the side characters are really interesting. Like I think Maria is a really fun one.
Yeah.
Because you kind of get to see all of this from the eyes of a child, but
Mm-hmm.
also like a mixed race child.
Yeah.
Um, who doesn't understand like why do some people not want to talk to me and why does this one guy why is he starving and pushing me away like I'm trying to give him food, what is happening?
Mm-hmm.
um but also like spoiler alert, just lost her dad. So like her both of her parents are dead because she lives with hot fox looking lady, but that's not her actual mom.
Right. It's just like she owns this like the inn essentially, and just like she was friends with Grius.
I feel like they were a little bit more than friends, but I could have been reading that wrong.
Yeah. I mean,
But either way, like she takes on Maria. She's like, all right, well, you're my kid now. Let's go. But she's dealing with that loss. She's dealing with like figuring out her place in the world. And like one of the things that was so fun for me was like whenever you get those beautiful like art pieces when you were traveling, um, you get like little drawings of them you could take back to her. She's like, I'm gonna put this up on the wall. I was like, oh, yay.
and then by the end of the game, like you can just like look on the wall and like there's all those pictures are just up there, just
hmm
hanging.
It's
I,
so cute.
I also really like that like there's like a quest where you have to like make a new sign for the inn, and it's like
Yeah.
you get like everyone to help out with it, and then like there's just like the picture of the three of you on there, and it's like, oh, that's real cute.
It's real cute. Um, yeah, that one was good. Trickster, I'm blanking on his name. I need to just look.
Alonzo.
Alonzo. He was fun. Because like the whole time I was like, I don't believe anything you're saying to me, but like you're not supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's his whole thing is that he's like a con man. But it like goes places and he quote unquote dies, and you're like, well, well then, guess that was his way of atoning. But then it turns out he wasn't actually dead.
He's
But
like,
that was
hello.
still his way of atoning. I was sad I didn't get to see his true form. I wanted to see the like doll like version of him.
Sorry, can't show you that.
No, that's censored.
Um,
Um,
I did like the surprises when you got through like the job system,
mhm.
because the job system is like it's fairly understandable if you've played other job system games before. It's like your main characters will have their base jobs, and then like everyone else will have their own jobs, and like once you get someone into your party, you can unlock that job to put it on someone else and all that sort of stuff. It's that sort of deal. And then the
Mhm.
jobs themselves will have like different levels that you can upgrade them, and then everyone has their own like super job that they get at the end of the game and all that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
Um, but when you get like the main characters leveled up all the way, when you get Juna and Yufa's leveled up all the way, it's like, oh, oh, I
Ah.
see.
Hmm.
Because like the protagonist is like seeker ability levels up to soul hacker, and I was like, wait a minute,
Yep.
I've played that game before.
Yep.
When Juna joins, you get like the different masks that you can put on the dancer ability, and like the when you go into that menu, the mask has the back of the Persona Tarot card design from 3 and 4 on it, and I was like,
Yep.
I've seen this
Hmm.
before. And then eventually she just gets a Persona summoner, not Persona summoner, but
Persona Master.
Persona Master ability.
Mhm.
And then Yufa eventually, she's the summoner, and then she eventually evolves into Devil Summoner. I
Yep.
was like,
And she gets things like he ho Jack
She
Frost.
can, summon some friends like Jack Frost and the Mothman,
The Mothman.
which is very fun because like you don't see any of those like SMT demons or anything of that nature in the game until that point. Like all the enemy designs and everything is like brand new and like not seen in any of those other games. So those coming in, I was like, oh, my friends,
They're here.
hee
It's
ho,
it's been so long.
hello, Mothman, you're here.
It's really, really funny because Stuart Clark, Stroll's voice actor, has gone on record saying like he didn't know that it was going to be an Atlas game
Mm-hmm.
until they're like, okay, like some of the very final lines they were asking him to do, they're like, okay, can you yell out like Devil Summoner? Can you yell out Soul Hacker? Can you yell out Persona Master? And he's like, wait a minute.
Hang on a second.
Wait a minute. So he's like, yeah, that's how I figured out that it was going to be in an Atlas game, but I didn't quite know what it was until it actually like was announced. Um, which is bizarre, and that's so wild that they do that to voice actors. But um, that's funny that he was at least familiar enough that he's like, wait a minute, what do you mean I'm going to be yelling these things out?
Yeah.
Because anybody can be anybody's role,
Right,
so
exactly.
he had to yell it.
Yeah. It's also funny that like, the whole thing about this game is that like, it's a whole new thing for Atlas in terms of like designing a JRPG and everything. It's this
Hmm.
whole fantasy thing. And then you get to like the Dragon Temple on Virga Island, and it's just like, oh, here's just a buried version of Shinjuku. This is just an SMT game. Come on. We you know what we're doing here. Come on.
Okay, but
It's just so funny. It's just
that
like
one specifically,
like, all right, okay, there you go.
that one specifically was Etrian Odyssey.
Yes, also, yes. They turn around and are like, this dungeon is very much an Etrian Odyssey dungeon with like FOEs and stuff. And then they just literally just renamed the island into like Etria. And it's just like, okay,
Etria.
okay.
I see you. It was so funny.
Because I think you mentioned it like, hey, there's gonna be something coming up when they're gonna do something after you finish that dungeon. I was like, okay. And then they
Mhm.
named it like Etria. I was like, oh my god. Come on. Come on. But yeah, I think the Shinjuku reveal is really good in this. Where like it's like, oh, here's the old world, and then like you later learn like how like the race that the protagonist is in or is was essentially the race that like everyone was beforehand
Mhm.
in the old world, and like
The Elda.
the humans basically that was humans, and then like that word got transformed into what it is now essentially, and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, the Shinjuku reveal is good, and it's just like, oh, I've played an SMT game before. I know where this is
Mhm.
going.
Mhm. Yeah, the human reveal was good because like it's explained that like the humans that we see as villains here are basically what used to be like the Elda humans, the old style humans, but they were like corrupted by anxiety.
hmm
It's like, oh, interesting. I'm also corrupted by anxiety. Yay!
Because they tried to make a utopia and it didn't work, and then everyone started fighting each other, and bad things happened,
Yeah.
as it typically tends to do.
Yeah, yeah. The whole idea of utopia is hmm,
Which
hmm.
is, I think it's an interesting thing to utilize, because like they have the book that Moore
More.
writes, and the protagonist has Luis has, and it's about like the old world and the utopia that it was and all that sort of stuff,
Hmm.
um, and how both of them try to like utilize that book as a basis for what they want their kingdoms to be, and how like each of them have completely different ideas
And reads on it.
and reads on it essentially as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Also, the whole idea that More is like based off of Thomas More in Utopia is really funny. They're like, hey, let's make him into a hot anime man with horns, with and a beret. Um,
And then, oops, by the way,
that's your dad.
that's dad. That's dad. He's gonna take you to
That's
real
dad.
Shinjuku, by the way, as well, and be like, "Hey, you want to stay here in the middle of
Hey,
the Shibuya crossing? Just hang out, huh?
yeah, huh,
Huh?
huh, huh,
Eh?"
huh,
You're like,
huh.
no.
Oh, and then you have to fight him.
And then you don't even get his hat.
No, you don't. It's
It's real
sad.
sad.
Um,
It's like, give me your hat, man.
Also, Greg Chun just completely nailed it as that character is incredible.
Really good.
Really, really good. But yeah, I was like, I see you, Thomas More, as a hot anime man. I mean, it's not Thomas More, like it's not him. I get that. But like it's very
Inspired
obviously
by.
inspired by because the name is More. He wrote Utopia, like come on.
Hmm.
It's literally like based on him, but
Yeah.
it's not him because it's, your dad.
Thanks, Dad.
Who is sad because he's like, oh, I lost my wife and I lost my kid. Now I am sad and I will get stabbed.
How you look?
Why did you turn him into Goofy?
I also did a stab motion when I did that, so that's just even more confusing. um, One of the things I find funny in this game is the reveal that the protagonist is actually the prince, and like there was like a weird splitting of the personalities or something. Like the prince had like
Like the
this.
soul and the body split.
Yeah, the prince had like read the book, the Utopia book, and like had all this like ideas and thoughts about like what it would be like to go explore the world, and that basically became the protagonist eventually.
Hmm.
Um, but when you fuse back together, there's
Hmm.
like two or three lines where the protagonist speaks in a British accent for no reason, and then immediately just changes back to like the regular accent.
For that part.
It's very funny.
That's really good.
He transforms back, does the fusion dance. He's like, "Oi, bruv, I'm back to normal." Hey guys, what's going on? I'm back. Hey, how's it going?
I'll have to rewatch that scene because I don't remember that.
It's very funny.
That's really good. Um, wow, wow, wow. I will say, like, if there's one thing that I think is like a weak part of this game, um, I'd say that's the like Raylia section where like you go to the Mage Academy and like you fight her there, but like you just fight her there. Like I thought that was gonna be a dungeon of some sort, and it
Yeah,
wasn't.
it kind of felt like there should have been more stuff there.
It felt like there was a cut dungeon there, honestly.
Yeah.
Because it's like we're gonna fight you on the inside or on the outside of this place, and then if you ever try and go there again, June is like, "No, I'm not ready." It's like, "Oh,
I gotta wait till the end of the game to go there.
get my hat,
Yeah, get my cool big hat.
big hat, and
Um,
and bring a cat back."
yeah, that part was. I could definitely see that being like something that they were just like originally going to make it a big thing, a big story thing, and then there's probably just like, we need to cut some things and shorten this game up a little bit,
Hmm.
and let's go there.
That's what it felt like to me. But the Opera House stuff that preceded it was really cool.
Yeah,
Like, you want to harpoon Luis? Cool.
yeah, and then it doesn't work, and you're like, oh crap.
Oh crap! Now that the church man has the spear, Yuffie's like, "That's mine. Can I have that back?"
No.
No, this is mine. And Luis is like, surprise,
Haha.
I'm not dead. But guess who is?
You.
Fidelio! Because yeah, Fidelio's like, you can't kill innocent people. That's terrible. And jumps in front of him and dies.
Ripperoni and pepperoni.
But then like his soul kind of like becomes one with Basilio, which then leads to Basilio getting his archetype and
Mm-hmm.
joining you. And
Mm-hmm.
it,
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
it's it's cute. They both kind of like had a thing for the sisters. Like Basilio was like, yeah, Relia like saved me a few years ago, and like I've always wanted to like thank her and give her this one thing and all. I was like, oh, and then like obviously Fidelio was like head over heels for Juna, so
Mm-hmm.
um that was cute, although tragic in both instances. Oops,
Oops.
oops. Yeah, everybody's corrupt except for us.
Yes, everything's corrupt. Bad things are happening. You gotta fix things. Even though, like, I do like as well, like the game. It's very like adamant about being like, look, even if you get like, if you become king, like, you're not gonna fix things overnight. Like, there's still people that are not going to believe in you.
Hmm.
You're not just gonna be able to like woo everyone at once. There's a lot of big problems within this country that are not going to be fixed overnight, and you're going to have to contend with that and figure out a way to do that, but also realize that like this is going to be a process,
Hmm.
which I think is really good because like I think if they would just been like, oh, you did it, now everything's fixed and good again, like that would have just like been a really big cop out of a of result essentially. Like
Hmm.
it would
It would have
have
been cheap.
it would have been very cheap and also kind of just went against the entirety of the whole story going up you're going throughout it, where they're
Hmm.
basically showing you like, hey, look at all these like different forms of racism that's happening. Here's why having religion in this high sect of power is really bad, and especially just like one prominent one, not
Hmm.
good. um
Mm-mm.
this country's very broken in terms of like the tribes, how they're not united or anything. Like we gotta find ways to fix that and everything. There's the humans are out there fighting. You gotta fight those and protect people and do all that
They're
sort of
real
stuff.
fucked up.
Um, there's a litany of problems here. You can't just like you're not gonna hand wave them away like that. So I do like how they were very much like saying like, hey, this is not an overnight fix. You gotta work at this.
Right, and like you get a lens into that through some of your like followers like with Barden he's having to figure out like well how do I lead this place now
Mm-hmm.
that our leader got her head cut off.
Yep.
But then there's like discontent because they don't like the way that he's leading at first because he's being too heavy-handed.
Mm-hmm.
um but then you have like Katharina who like her you know again her race is like on the lower totem pole and
Mm-hmm.
she's trying to figure out like how do I like teach them that like if we're going to get ourselves better, like we have to educate ourselves, we have to learn something, we have to get some kind of like trade job. Um, which yeah, there was some parts in there that she's like stealing is bad. And I was like, stealing from rich people is like bad, but
Well, I
like
think she's also she's
I
like,
get her
hey,
point.
we could do this, but like all her followers are like, all right, we're just gonna murder everyone. And she's like,
Don't do that.
that's not really what I was thinking.
Right. So she ends up like establishing like a school,
Mm-hmm.
like a trade school essentially for folks to like rehabilitate themselves and um be able to take care of themselves, which is great. But again, like she's saying, there are still issues and we're still trying to figure out how this is gonna work. So like you're not seeing change overnight. You're seeing like oh shoot, what's her name? Bridgetta? Something like
Brigitte.
that. Brigida. Um she's the merchant.
Mm-hmm.
Like her entire situation is like the church is extremely corrupt and is like messing with her business and stealing her dog, which is monstrous behavior. Um, and she like has to realize like, oh, well, murdering them is not the solution. These are kids. So then she like figures out how do I use my expertise to like help people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like that's kind of her way of fighting back against the church, which is cool. So you're seeing like through these different followers, like this is how these problems are presenting themselves, and like there aren't perfect solutions, and they're all trying really hard to like figure out how do we fix things as best as we can in the situation that we're in.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what you're gonna have to do if you become king is, listen to people like this, which is, the whole thing that you do at the end, like you go and talk to everybody and you're like, oh hey, this is how things have been going. Um, but like it's very obvious that it's not a like quick fix to change the leadership.
Yeah. Exactly.
But I think that's good and it's realistic.
Yes.
Um, because like, hey, cool, we just put up a new monarch. Turns out he's the son of the old monarch. So we're just, keeping a hereditary monarchy in place accidentally. Um, but he was technically democratically chosen.
Yeah.
Technically. Um,
He democratically won by killing Luis.
yeah, but Luis also became like a weird persona god villain.
Yeah,
So,
not wrong.
once you're at that point, you lost.
Uh,
It's like, "Well, look at me. I'm a villain. I'm gonna eat these dolls."
nom, 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 nom,
Uh,
nom, nom.
I'm no 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 no. I'm like, no, get that out of your mouth. It's like the cats, don't eat off the floor. That was me with Luis.
Hmm.
No. Um, but like he wants to like use the anxieties as power,
Hmm.
whereas the protagonist is like, nah, like we have to try and make people's lives better.
Don't worry, we'll make people's lives better by just having all the strong people left alive, and then everything will be good again.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll work fine. That'll
Hmm.
that'll that'll work great.
What could possibly go wrong?
I wonder. But yeah, I think that it was really well done. I really enjoyed the story. I really liked the character beats.
Hmm.
Again, Luis went off the deep end and became a persona villain at the end, which like cool. That was great.
Hmm.
You
As
know.
you do.
I do love that like once he realizes like I don't need these horns anymore, he just takes them off and throws them. He's like, "We're
Goodbye,
good."
headband. See ya.
Which by the way, he's he's also an Elda.
Hmm.
That was a big twist. So, you have the dichotomy of Elda here.
Hmm.
But yeah, you don't go to you don't live in Tokyo. You go back to fantasy.
Yep.
And you become king.
Got work to do.
hmm Everybody gets like cool new fits
I do
a
love
year later.
the epilogue where it's like, yeah, everyone gets their fun new jobs and new outfits and everything, and like you're the king, but you're still going off and just being a gremlin and just like running around,
Talking to drunk guys.
just chatting up with drunk dudes and being like, yeah, what do you think's going on with the country right now? He's like, ah,
This is
yeah.
what I think.
You're like, okay, cool.
All
Anyways,
right. And everyone's like, you can't do that. You can't just go. And he's like, nah, but what if I did?
everyone's just like, dude, Hulkenberg's is going to be so mad at you. She's going to drag you kicking and screaming back to the castle.
Yeah. But then when Hulkenberg does show up, they're like, you can't just drag him back dressed like that. You realize that, right? Like you're literally in your uniform. You can't just drag him back like that.
I'm like, oh.
You're like, oh.
But it was a nice little way to like get to see how like everyone's doing post the events of the game and everything, and to see like how things are moving along, how things are moving towards hopefully getting better. I mean, there's a lot of talk of like just regular people being like, well, we got the new king and he seems to be doing things or trying to do things, but like is this stuff actually gonna work and all that sort of stuff.
Or
So
like my life hasn't improved
yeah,
any.
so the slow process is beginning for
hmm
sure. But yeah, everyone's got their cool new jobs. They got new outfits. Juna's got a big hat. It's very
Juna's
good.
got, and again, Juna brought the cat back.
She brought a cat.
Um,
Meow.
Meow, which that cat is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I had a theory, but I don't think the theory is correct because it's a boy cat apparently.
Mystery cat.
Because my initial theory was that it was like
The mom.
the mom in some capacity because she was hanging out with more.
Mm-hmm.
But no, it's a boy cat, so I guess no.
Meow.
Unless she just possessed a boy cat,
That
which like,
you never know.
you know, that's fine. You don't gotta have matching parts to possess a cat.
True.
Um, so it's possible, but I don't know. The cat is mysterious. But you had some nice little things in the epilogue.
Mm-hmm.
Stroll becomes like a general.
Yeah.
Heisei basically like becomes the lead of the group that he was like banished from.
Mm-hmm.
Basilio like is the leader of like the airship brigade,
Mm-hmm.
which is cool because he has experience there. He was there for a long time. Um, Trying to remember. Juno was doing the Mage Academy.
Mm-hmm.
Yufa is basically like a ambassador of some sort. Is that right?
I think that's right.
Obviously, Hulkenberg is doing what she was doing before and is basically like the captain of the King's Guard type
Mm-hmm.
thing. So they got cool new things to do, new outfits.
I definitely feel like this would be like the situation of like the protagonist like go out and about in the city and just be like, oh hey, what's up? How's it going?
Hmm. Yeah,
What's up with your family? Hey, type deal.
it makes sense given like how his character is the whole game.
And also because like the whole thing is like the whole point of the game is you gotta get supporters and everything. So like these people would know who he is, and presumably he would know probably like people in the city as well. So like
Hmm.
it wouldn't be out of the question for that to be like a thing.
Right.
Um,
Although, like, there's one part where he's like out buying stuff, and they're like, "Why would the king come out here for bread? That's
and
silly."
he's
And
just
he's
like,
just like, "Ow,
bread.
bread," which fair bread's delicious,
Nom 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 nom.
but it's really funny. They're like, why would he do that?" It's like, well, he's here.
He's
He did
here.
it.
And then you get that final scene where they're all going to go out on another adventure and just like cruise the lands and see how things are going outside of the capital and all that sort of stuff. Which again, something you got to do as a
Yep.
king.
They
Um,
take Maria this time though.
yeah, I do wonder like because like you could definitely look at this ending and say it is ambiguous if like if it's going to be something they explore more things with the series at a later date or if this is like a no a hard stop finale type thing
Hmm.
because with how acclaimed it was and probably it sold really it's probably going to sell pretty well as well. Like do you think they will like make more within this particular series or is this team going to like go on and make something else after this?
Yeah, that's a good question. I know that they had talked to Hoshino recently about that, but I don't remember what his answer was. Like, I could see them doing more. Um, but at the same time, like I feel like this story is kind of told.
Right.
So like it would be neat to see like other things happening in the same world, in my opinion.
True. Yeah, you could definitely do something of that nature as well.
Right. Instead of just necessarily like following the same cast of characters. Like it'd be cool if you like ran into them or something, but like I feel like telling a different kind of story in the same world would be more impactful for me than like having a direct sequel with the same characters, that kind of thing.
Like a Yakuza 7 situation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I think it would be interesting to see like how this world is like what how is it improving now post this game and all that sort of stuff and like where could you see things that could be improved upon and all that sort of stuff, but with different characters,
Mhm.
and then maybe just like run into like you said into the characters from this game and just be like, hey, what's up? How's it going? Anyways, doing our own thing here type deal. But yeah, I think it would be I would be intrigued to see like the pro tags work of building up this country and seeing how that's going and all that sort of stuff. Um, but I think it would be hard to do another game with those characters again and like make them go up against a big threat because like what would be a big threat that they would have to go up against this time type deal.
Right.
So I think like you said, doing a different set of characters would probably be the smarter thing to do if they wanted
Hmm.
to do stuff with more stuff with this, or they'll just do something else. So who knows?
I'd be fine with something new too.
Yeah,
Um, I still can't get over the monk chanting though.
it's pretty good.
It's pretty good. The first time he started doing that, I was like, huh?
And then by the end of it, you're like, yeah,
I was just vibing by the end of it, like, oh hell yeah, let's let monk go.
he's jamming.
He's jamming. He's spitting it. I don't know what he's saying, but he's spitting it. But yeah, it was. I really enjoyed this game.
Yeah.
Um, that's it. I enjoyed the game.
I mean, it was your game of the year, so.
I love Stroll. Give me a Stroll figure. I'll buy it immediately.
Well, I'm sure they'll probably put one of those out at some point.
Yeah, they've already done a Nindo of Protag.
Yeah, so like I'm assuming like considering the popularity of this game and everything, like it will be they'll definitely be milking some merchandise of this game for
Mhm.
years to come.
Probably, yeah. And you know what? I'm a sucker. I'll buy the Stroll.
Mm-hmm.
I love him.
So there you go.
Hmm. Anything else we should mention?
No one handed another person a metaphor, which I thought was very disappointing.
There was the guy in the like seaside area that is having like anxiety about his teeth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he says something effective like, "Oh, it's a metaphor." I was like, "Ah, da, 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 da." I took a screenshot of it and everything. He said the name of the game. So that was pretty good. But yeah,
This is a ReFantazio.
the metaphor was the ReFantazio we met along the way.
It's true. There you go.
Yee. It was a good game. It was a fun game.
Game good.
I game good. You had the fun Prince transitions every day. Time marches on.
The age of a new king draws near.
And then it changed eventually, but
It
I
did
forgot what it
change,
changed. I forgot what it changed to.
but it just counted down.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But that's metaphor. Game
Hmm.
good.
Game good.
Al's game of the year.
Hmm.
There you go.
Liked it a lot.
Liked it a lot.
Liked it a lot.
But that's gonna do it for us this week. So if you'd like more from us, head on over to seasolanimecheckup.com or SAC.cool is where you can find past episodes of this podcast and other podcasts like Jared Now Watch. You can also find columns and reviews on the site as well. If you'd like more from Ann Ladium, go to AnnLadium.com. She's got columns and reviews. Follow us on Twitter and TikTok at Anime Checkup. You can follow us on Blue Sky at seasolanimecheckup.com. You can buy our books, One Shiny Moment, Critical Analysis of Love, Life, Sunshine, Hot Tubs, and Pac-Man on Amazon.com. And you can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/SACOVA. Buy us a slice of pizza. Get access to unedited versions of the podcast early. Our monthly exclusive Patreon-only podcast, which we have a new episode up.
Mm-hmm.
Sneaking it in before the end of the year, of course. That's just how we do things.
Yep.
We watched a movie properly for December, a holiday movie, of course, which was Die Hard.
Die Hard.
So you can listen to us chat about that and some interesting tidbits about that film, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Next week, we'll talk about something. We have ideas, we got things we got to talk about, so we'll just, sift through all that and figure out what we want to talk about and continue 2025 the proper way when it's not 2015.
Not 2015, yeah.